All right, let's go ahead and keep going with part 4 of our video lecture for chapter 12, Europe during the post-classical era, also known as the Middle Ages and the Dark Ages. So, Europe. After the fall of Roman Empire, we see the rise of Germanic kingdoms, we see the unification and somewhat centralization of parts of Western Europe under the Carolingian dynasty, the Carolingian Empire in France. But then that breaks apart. We see the further breaking of political authority with the arrival of Muslims and Vikings and everything else. But then we're going to start seeing a return to centralized rule, but not centralized in the same sense of large empires like the Tang and the Song, or the Caliphates, or even the Sultanate of Delhi. It's going to be centralized locally, right, regionally, or even nationally. And we're going to see the rise of centralized kingdoms in Western Europe. So they're not going to be unified politically as one huge empire like the Roman Empire once ruled over all of Western Europe. We're going to see the centralization of smaller kingdoms, right? States, kingdom states. All right, the first of these is going to be France. It's going to be ruled by a line of a dynasty called the Capetians. These guys they're going to come after the Carolingians. They're going to have centralized authority. They're going to have a bureaucracy, something that we haven't seen in Europe for a long time. The Capetians are going to constantly be fighting with England, because sometimes England wants to take control of France, and sometimes France wants to take control of England. Then we have the Holy Roman Empire. The Holy Roman Empire is a territory that includes Germany. It includes parts of France. It includes parts of Italy, parts of Central Europe as well. And the Holy Roman Empire was very decentralized compared to the other ones we're going to talk about. They were unified under this guy called Emperor Otto. And he also, the Holy Roman Empire is also kind of like a replacement of the Carolingian Empire. And they, crown themselves Pope or crowned by the Pope. But the Holy Roman Empire is going to be more decentralized. The emperor is not going to have full authority over all his nobles and lords. And on top of that, he's going to be fighting with the Pope frequently because he rules over parts of Italy, and the Pope, of course, is very active. Politically in charge of parts of Italy as well. So they're going to compete with the Pope, and the Holy Roman Empire is never going to really come too powerful. Again, the lords, the nobility in the Holy Roman Empire had a lot of power, and they're constantly fighting with the lords as to the lords are constantly fighting with the emperor as to who's really in charge. So when the emperor wants to go to war, when the emperor wants to raise taxes, when the emperor wants to do anything, it's very difficult to do anything, and the end result is we have a very weak Holy Roman Empire, very decentralized Holy Roman Empire. One of the biggest arguments that took place between the emperor of the Holy Roman Empire and the Pope was something called the Investiture Contest, or controversy. Basically, the lay investiture is the question who picks the bishops, right? Because we mentioned that the bishops are part of the nobility, but they're also clergy of the church, right? They're employees of the church. So who do they work for? Who do they answer? Does a bishop listen to the Pope because he's a member of the church? Or does the bishop listen to the emperor because he is also a member of the nobility? And in the past, the emperor chose the Pope, chose the bishops in his kingdom. And the Pope said, no, you can't. You cannot be choosing, the bishops, because the bishops work for me. So the Pope has to pick the bishops. And they argue about this, and the end result is that, the Pope tells the emperor, you're excommunicated. And then the emperor has to, come to Rome and beg for forgiveness, and he's on his, hands and feet, and it's, snowing, and this whole story. But it shows how the Holy Roman Emperor didn't have all that much power, right? He has to bow down to the Pope, and the Pope tells him what to do. And the end result is the Pope gets to pick who his bishops are going to be. So that was the controversy, and again, this is another emphasis, another proof of how decentralized and weak the Holy Roman Empire was. right? So there you see the emperor dressed in rags like a monk, bowing down, kissing the feet, kissing the hands, kissing the ring of the Pope. Now, probably the most centralized kingdom during this time is going to be what we call Norman England. So basically the Normans, who were the Vikings, who lived in northern France or Normandy, they will sail across the English Channel, go from France into England. They will conquer the different kingdoms that were there. So the kingdoms were Germanic kingdoms, right? Anglo-Saxons kingdoms. And they were all conquered and overthrown. They were all united under the ruler called William the Conqueror. And William the Conqueror is going to create a centralized state in England with a bureaucracy and sheriffs and other administrative and officials. They're also eventually gonna create a parliament, which is going to be a group of advisors, representatives of nobility, and eventually representatives of the commoners. And the parliament is going to slowly accumulate power and is able to put limits on the absolute power of the kings in England. And the parliament is eventually going to force the king to sign off on the Magna Carta, which is a list of restrictions on the power of the king and rights for the nobility. And the Magna Carta tells the king, you can't do this, you can't do that, and that the people, or at least the noble people, have some rights that can't be just ignored or removed. But the Magna Carta originally didn't have any rights for the common people, so common people were kind of screwed over. But eventually those ideas will spread from the nobility to the common folk. So again, the Normans, they lived in northern France. Over here, they would migrate into England. They will conquer England, create Norman England. So they would rule both northern France and England, and this would kind of start off all these different wars between France and England over territories up here in Normandy. So we see the states of Europe, or we see the Islamic, the Caliphate, the Al-Andalus over here in Spain. We see the huge Caliphate Islamic Empire, going from North Africa to Egypt to the Middle East, all the way into Turkey. We see at this time the Byzantine Empire is shrinking, smaller and smaller, right? The Seljuk Turks taking more and more territory from them. We see the Holy Roman Empire, even though it's huge, right? Hugely large territory, again, is very decentralized and not that much power. Now, Spain is going to be kind of like the last of the Western European countries to form, because remember the Spanish were ruled by the Muslims. But in the 1100s and all the way into the 1400s, we see a long process called Reconquista, which is where the Spanish are going to slowly reconquer territories that belonged to that originally belonged to the Moors, right? The Moors are the North African Muslims who ruled Spain. So the Moors are going to get kicked out, right? And the famous year is in the year 1492, which is the same year, of course, that Spain sends, Columbus to sail. But the Reconquista, again, they kick out the Muslim rulers. You remember Al-Andalus, right, or Muslim Spain? It was a multicultural area. It was a tolerant place where Jews and Christians and Muslims lived together peacefully. But once the Christians came in and took over, they kind of kicked out everyone, and those, forced those who remained to convert to Christianity or else, and they would persecute non-Christians, kind of going backwards on what other people have done before. So Iberia, these are called Iberian Christian kingdoms. There's going to be a few of them, but eventually they're going to become Spain and Portugal. Those are the two main ones. Iberia is, of course, the Iberian Peninsula. Granada was the last of the Moorish kingdoms. That was before it was all in the southern tip of Spain before it was kicked out. So here we see again, it's starting in the 1000s all the way into the 1400s basically, and the last kingdom like Granada would be somewhere around here. So Reconquista, again, it wasn't a rapid process, it was a slow process. But what we do see is that now for the Spanish, the kings who do this, who complete this process, right, they're known as Ferdinand and Isabel. They're known as the Catholic kings. We're going to see that, that the creation of Spain is going to be closely tied to Christianity because, they're reconquering this land from the foreign Muslims. And it will be, so Spain will be very closely tied with Christianity. And we're going to see that in time period 4, when the Spanish set up their colonies all over the Americas, we're going to see that relationship strengthen over time, right? Spain's going to be kind of like the major Catholic country of Europe. All right, so we're going to stop here for part 3 or part 4. I already forgot part 4. I'll see you next time.